let me ask you a temperamental question about your temperament. When I visited your studio last, which was a few months ago, some of these works were ones that you had in the studio. I recall that one of them was about consumer culture, and there was a kind of subtext there, as there is here. Another one had to do with gender and sexual politics. These are very freighted, weighted subjects in our time of history, in our culture. Why do you elect not to take a more declarative stand? Since you're dealing with political issues that you must have, even if you have conflicted or divided opinions yourself, you're kind of hands-off. Hands-on on the work, but hands-off on the viewer. Why do you elect to do that?
I think because I want it to be about the work rather than politics. I don't want to have a stance against people and lose that potential for the conversation, Therefore, I don't want my art to create enemies, It really goes back to the idea where it's about a conversation. I'll enjoy a conversation with anyone, and conversations are great when people have the same interests. They're also great, and actually probably even more so when it's with someone who has a difference of opinion. And I think amazing, and I've said this before in interviews and elsewhere, I think amazing conversations come about where two different people don't necessarily see eye to eye or agree, but they're engaged in a conversation, and that process, and it evolves, and what they do is, at the end of the conversation, they slightly take on a better understanding or opinion of something that they didn't consider before that conversation, and they both walk away slightly adjusted, if not for the better because of that, and I think that's fascinating. And I think that's a really, really great conversation, because you learn something, and you're willing to let go of your ego or your principles or your ethics a little bit to consider the other side. It's not about you and me, you or me against you. It's about how you have created your ideas, which work for you, and how I've done that for me, and that's great. But it's more interesting when you and I can then get together and create something out of that, your ideas and my ideas, and then we're closer.
Well, they're very thought-provoking works. Let me ask you one quick, brief question before we invite comments from our guests. The title of this show, or this whole body of work, is Whiteout, which suggests something like snow blindness, that when you have whiteout conditions, not around here, but when you come from a cold climate, as he does, if you have blizzard conditions and you can't see, visibility is zero, that's a whiteout. A whiteout can connote erasure, a removal of something. Why would you use a word that connotes invisibility to describe this sumptuously visual art?
Sure. Or in addition to that, whiteout, which is almost a contemporary now material of, like whitewashing a wall.
Yeah.
And I think but the reason being is because this is all challenging and at times very difficult subject matter on which to, hey, let's talk about sexual politics. Let's talk about your religions and my sex. Not exactly a great topic for dinner conversation, but yeah, I think the idea was to somewhat mask this or veil these at times can be challenging or difficult subject matter in an almost innocent way that allows people in one way for the work to see it aesthetically and allow them to get closer to something that they may not want to get close to in the first place. And I think it's that idea of whiteout that I like. There was an implied covering up or masking, but also the innocence of that, and in essence, a neutral place, which I wanted people to see the aesthetic. I wanted people to still realize that there's a lot of controversial ideas that it's presenting in there, but I also wanted it to be about the aesthetics, you know, and really the beauty of that is that people can maybe look at something that they would never step into or would pay attention to, and then realize that first at a distance they saw something that was of interest, you know, maybe had an aesthetic they were really drawn to, and then it allows them to get closer, really up close, to see all these little bits and pieces that call everything into question, but then ultimately you're like, wow, that was, you know, done in a beautiful way, you know, so to speak. It's, you know, what's the saying, you know, like almost like speak softly and carry a big stick, you know. It's like people are going to listen to you when you're speaking softly, you know, but if you're not, people aren't going to get close enough. So I wanted to try to speak softly about things, and, you know, hopefully people will do the same.
Beautiful explanation.
Mm-hmm.
We have time for a couple comments or questions from you guys. Anybody? Yes.
Well, I have to say I'm a big fan of Tim's work and Tim himself. And I just wanted to say I love the overall billboard impact you get from a distance. And then when you actually close in on it, because you invite us to look through the keyhole at the details and the fine work and the subtext, subject matter. And I get to see that you're interacting and tethered to your current events and your culture, and I find it a fascinating netherworld between abstraction and representation. So it makes it, you know, really gushy and good to me. And if anyone's ever talked to Tim about the process of his collage, all you have to talk about is the nature of paper, and you get the ecstasy of paper. For 15 minutes, and then you need a cigarette after.